important meeting today. All right, I'll keep going. Again, good afternoon and welcome everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. The fact that we have over 50 people registered says a lot about the interesting engagement from this group. So we look forward to hearing your recommendations today and having a fruitful dialogue. So with that, I want to turn things over to Teresa Coons, our CEO for MML, to get us started.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We have a great turnout for this upcoming legislative session priorities. Bill George, our managing director, will go through those priorities and the process with all of you, and our team will take it away. But I just wanted to thank you again. We're actually heading to the MACo conference after today's call, and we'll be meeting with legislators this week to check out the viability of that priorities. And our board will be kicking them up for their September annual retreat under the leadership of President James, and reviewing those priorities then. A quick thank you to Chair Brown, Nate Brown, Mayor of, oh my gosh, Brunswick, for chairing our legislative committee this year and leading the way. We know it was a busy month in July with a lot of meetings for our committee. So for all those members of legislative committee who are joining us today, thank you for your hard work. Be aware it's going to get harder when session begins, but we appreciate the work you've done so far, and we're excited to bring these priorities to the board. So with that, I'd like to ask Bill to take it on.
Great. Thank you, Teresa, and good afternoon, everyone. Excuse me. I'll start with just a little bit about the process for adoption of the MML's legislative priorities for 2027 legislative session. So it starts back in April when the Legislative Action Request, which we call LAR form, is released to the membership to submit back to MML staff. That was done in early April with a submission deadline of May 31st. There are a handful of things that need to be filled out on the form, but one of the key things is getting governing body approval. So this is your council or commission, or if it's an internal department, the vote of the membership. So that is due on July 1st. So those are the deadlines that were set and were met by 17 legislative action requests were submitted this year, which is a nice number. It's right on par with the past couple of years. This year's legislative committee met twice in late July on the 22nd and 29th to hear presentations from MML staff on each one of the each one of the LARs. Was able to ask questions about each one. In between the two legislative committee meetings, staff provided some more background information, as well as a straw poll that was used to narrow down the discussion for the July 29th meeting. During that meeting, the legislative committee voted to recommend two legislative priorities for the 2027 session, which you'll hear about in just a little bit. Now this is the opportunity for legislative committee and the staff to present to the broader membership those recommendations ahead of the final step, which is the MML Board of Directors vote to consider these at their September 10th meeting, at which point those that are adopted by the board are formally legislative priorities for the league for the upcoming session. Next slide, please. Yeah, great. So here we go. The legislative action request for 2027. Here is the full list of those that were submitted. The bold is just to give you a quick, catch your eye on the content of each one. We typically label each LAR in the fashion that bills are written, or at least titled in the General Assembly, with a gradual narrowing of the subject matter. So as you can see, yeah, there were 17 this year, another good turnout. From there, the two that were selected as recommendations by the Legislative Committee, the first one has to do with modernizing municipal revenue structures. And for that, I will pass it over to Justin to lead on that priority.
Excellent. Thank you, Bill. Good afternoon, everyone. As a quick history lesson, it was in 1961 that the General Assembly recognized municipal and county property tax dependency had gotten to such a point that they needed to add additional authorities to local governments to help meet the residents' needs of that day and time. Fast forward to 2008. Well, I should say before I get there, it was 1967 that the General Assembly ultimately allowed for a local income tax to be able to kind of offset that burden on property taxpayers in the state. Fast forward to 2008, once again, local governments, MML and MACo, started a push for reducing our dependency on property tax. Again, we kind of reached the boundaries of what income tax is able to provide, and property tax revenues weren't keeping up. Rates had to be increased. We all kind of know what happened in 2009 and beyond with the Great Recession and then trying to claw back highway user revenue. So fast forward once again to 2023, and this is where we're seeing the more recent push for modernization of revenue structures again by the league. 2003, the league introduced legislation to establish an amusement and emission tax on food and beverage. We adopted that for the 2024 session. The next year we did that again. And then last year we started talking about creating a task force to process by which we were successful in the 1960s. So you can see in the little chart on the right, property taxes are making up nearly 60% of municipal general fund revenues. Are our next largest source. Income taxes, you all have no control over. So we're pretty much, whenever there's a mandate that comes in, or a new program needs to be created, or a program that has existing revenue needs to be backfilled because the federal government pulls out, or the state program isn't funding you quite as heavily, we need to backfill it with property taxes, or you need to backfill it with property taxes, I should say. With that said, the task force legislation that we introduced last year was successful and did pass. Work began on the task force July 24th was the first meeting. We are currently awaiting meeting dates for the following ones. But the hope here is that the task force will have recommendations for us by December 1st. And so with that, the priority recommendation adopted by the legislative committee is strategically vague. And it provides staff with the ability to champion the issue now while maintaining flexibility on the solution or solutions entering the 2027 legislative session once we have a little bit more information on what the task force is recommending.
So if you have any questions as we go along, please try and use the Q&A feature on your dashboard. We'll try and answer them as we go along. But of course, there will be an opportunity at the end during wrap up where we can field a few more questions. There's also an opportunity for the membership to email you'll see on the final screen, we'll have all of our contact information. If you have any further questions that you think of afterwards or any feedback that you'd like to provide, feel free to email any one of us and we'll be happy to take into consideration.
And if you're interested in the task force, it was recorded, and we'll get that link out to members if you have not seen it. Justin and I presented during the first session about 2 weeks ago. And Michael O'Connor, Mayor Frederick, and Dr. Chad Rooney, City Manager for Chestertown, are serving on the task force on our behalf. So please let us know if we can bring any information forward or testimony. We'd love to bring it forward for next meetings. Thank you.
Yeah. I do see 2 quick questions in the chat about the pie chart. The data is all coming from the Department of Legislative Services annual report on local finances. They broadly share all government revenue sources. This is a narrower version that doesn't include things like fees and service charges, because those are enterprise funds that are different from your general fund. So we excluded some of those sources that are not general fund revenues, and this is what we were left with. And this is the average across municipalities, obviously. Some places are going to see 70% or more. Some places may be in the 40% for property tax revenues as a section of their pie chart. This is the average.
Okay, any other questions that we see at the moment?
Is there anything in the Q&A section?
And we can always check it back at the end.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So feel free to keep those questions coming. We'll be able to circle back towards the end as we go on to the next steps. But in the meantime, Angelica, please, if you don't mind talking about MML's second legislative priority.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Angelica. So our second priority is addressing coordinated takeover events. So over the last few months, we've heard from municipalities across the state that are dealing with large groups that organize online and then rapidly converge on a community, often with very little warning. So a town or a city could suddenly have hundreds of people arriving, and especially for smaller police departments, that's simply beyond what they can reasonably handle on their own. Even when a town gets advanced warning, preventing an incident like this can require significant aid over time, road closures, coordination with other jurisdictions, additional event security, coordinating with state and neighboring law enforcement. And we've seen these events disrupt municipal festivals, 4th of July, downtown areas, commercial centers, roadways. So not everyone who shows up is necessarily engaging in illegal activity. Some of these events, though, have escalated very quickly into fights, property damage, fireworks being used as weapons, in some cases shootings and other serious violence. So the Legislative Committee adopted this as a priority because we've heard concerns about accountability and whether existing law gives law enforcement the right tools for this particular kind of activity. These events are often deliberately organized. They can move from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and organizers are becoming increasingly sophisticated about using private social media channels that are more difficult for law enforcement to monitor, more so than Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. So it's especially a tricky issue because any legal tools have to interact with First Amendment rights, including lawful speech, assembly, and online communication. So a solution would likely include a bill, maybe a combination of a bill and some sort of executive assistance to develop a coordinated statewide legislative framework to provide local governments and law enforcement agencies with additional tools to prevent, respond to, and deter these coordinated takeovers while still protecting those lawful assembly, speech, and spontaneous public gathering constitutional rights. So if your municipality has experience with one of these events or has taken steps locally to manage or prevent one, I would love to hear from you. The examples that we're getting from locals are really helping us identify where the gaps actually are, and they'll be important as we continue to make the case for whatever legislation ultimately drops.
Great. Thank you, Angelica. Any questions that we see on that?
Yes, we received a question from Owen Bailey. Has there been consideration to helping municipalities adopt land value taxes that would help spread the revenues of over the total acreage of a given jurisdiction and not just the built structures?
Yeah, I can take that one. Thank you. So the task force is going to look at a number of proposals here soon. The way we understand that it should be working is that our first meeting in July was mostly organizational, kind of understanding the challenges and constraints of property tax currently, the future that we're heading towards, et cetera. The next couple of meetings will be focused more on what are the universe of potential solutions, and then narrowing that down to things they really want to look at closely ahead of potential recommendations. I do expect land use or land value taxation to be a discussion point in particular, because I know counties don't have that authority. Municipalities may already, although it's somewhat of a legal question mark. There is a 1996 general attorney opinion on it suggesting we already have that authority, but I'm sure everybody would love to see that clarified via legislative intent.
Great, thanks, Justin.
No further questions.
No other questions in the queue at the moment, so we can move on to the next slide. So as you can see, here are some of the next steps as we move forward with these recommended priorities. Obviously, the next administrative step internally is board adoption coming up next month on the 10th. Once we have board approval on the priorities going forward, then it's time for staff to really get going and develop these concepts and priorities into actionable legislation for the 2027 General Assembly session. So for those that have been around for a while, you may remember that we altered the LAR process recently within the last couple of years to move some of these internal deadlines further earlier in the calendar. And that has proved really successful over the last several years in getting stronger bill sponsors, tighter legislative drafts, earlier bill hearings, all things that add up to legislative success. And we've seen that, 3 out of the last 4 years have yielded a positive result for MML's priority bills. So yeah, those are just some of the things that we'll be working on for the rest of the interim on the priorities, at least. You'll see also that there's a leadership conference in December in Baltimore. Typically, there is something in the workshop realm on the legislative advocacy and the priority process or priority policies. We have the General Assembly opening day reception. That's something that has been hosted annually for as long as I can remember in mid-January. And then Advocacy Day is a relatively new item on the calendar from MML's perspective. This coincides with the annual Winter Mayor's Conference, and it's an opportunity for the membership to come and pound the table for some of MML's priorities, meet with your legislators and your delegation, as well as hear from presiding officers and committee leadership. So those are kind of the next steps for the advocacy team in terms of big ticket milestones. If there's any questions on those, feel free to let us know, but it sounds like we have another question in the queue.
The process if the board doesn't approve. What's the process?
Have a board member approved before? I don't know the answer to that.
So it was only in, goodness, how long ago was it that we changed these? 2023?
23.
Yeah, so it's only been a couple years under this new format where the board has final approval as opposed to the membership at fall conference, which is the way it worked before.
Before COVID, right?
Mhm. Yeah, so if the board does not adopt the recommended priorities, then they don't become priorities, right? It's the board's final decision, and there is some leeway for them to make alterations as well.
Absolutely.
The legislative committee takes the time over, like I said, over the course of 2 meetings and several hours to fully vet these as recommendations. And that typically carries some weight with the board, but it's the board's ultimate final decision on which priorities the league adopts.
Absolutely. And if the board does not adopt something at the retreat, they still have another meeting prior to the upcoming session. It's just late in the timeline, and it's hard to get a bill sponsor as well as a draft if you're submitting it in late December. Right. So it'll be the staff's hope to get everything approved in September. That way we have an opportunity.
Exactly.
And which has been part of our success for the last 4 years, where
Right.
we've been able to pass priorities.
Absolutely.
Any
Okay.
other questions you're seeing? Sorry.
You've answered them all.
Okay.
We'll give you
so-
guys another minute or two.
Yeah, if you want to just pop up the final screen, Iris, with our contact information.
Sure.
Again, this is an opportunity to for the broader membership to hear some of the work that's been put in by the legislative committee. And again, if you have any thoughts, here's the advocacy and public policy team. So feel free to shoot us an email on anything related to this that
Is there feasibility to add additional ARs later in the year, or is this the hard cutoff point? Same answer, Brooks. It's going to be very difficult to add priorities because of the drafting deadlines by DLS and getting a sponsor. My anticipation is with the broader revenue priority. It'll allow us to get into specifics in December with other bills that are taking place or recommendations from a task force that we can
Yeah.
sign on to. So again, it's really not even our timing. It is that process at the Legislative Services who draft the bills and getting a sponsor who will want to have more revenue towards cities. It's not exactly the easiest pitch sometimes.
Right.
The takeovers, I do believe, will be a part of juvenile takeovers, I guess is what we're calling it.
Coordinated takeovers, because it's not
Coordinated.
always juveniles.
Sure, thank you. I think that we'll see more interaction and we'll see some support there from various members of legislature who've already reached out to us.
Yeah, and there is a process built into the legislative committee rules and procedures as well for, typically they're for ideas that had not been considered by the legislative committee earlier in the year. Perhaps something of great importance comes up later in the year. There is an option, as Teresa mentioned, for for the process to work towards adoption later in the year should something new come up.
Michelle, I see your comment. I'm not sure which municipality you represent and the list of participants. I'm not sure if that is for the committee members or LARs, but every municipality member of MML has an opportunity to both apply for committees as well as submit an LAR. And if it's about the committee members, every district is geographically represented as well as every staff department. So we can certainly send you your representative so you can share your thoughts with that person. And if it is the LAR process, again, it was an open process and communicated frequently. And I've been told too frequently, we do send a lot of messages out to make sure we're in front of everybody ahead of time. But please let us know how we can make sure your town is listed in the future if you are interested. The town of North Beach is very active in the league. So I'm assuming that they were happy with the LARs they saw come across. They've been a member for as long as I've known, and the mayor, council, and staff are very active in our process and our committees. So they're pretty well involved. But if we can get you involved more, Mickey Hummel's actually on the board, who's a council member. Mike Benson just came off the board. I'm seeing your follow-up questions. I think that's probably a question for your town administrator, Linda, and the rest of the council. Thank you, Michelle.
Is that the end of the?
And we
questions
will
in the
share the slide deck.
Yes.
Oh, for sure,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Real quickly, before we sign off, October 8th is a Thursday. Is that the right date? I'm making up in my head.
It is the 8th.
It is the 8th at the Crown Plaza in Annapolis. We are hosting an MML's Town Hall. That is going to be an opportunity to hear from all the statewide candidates for comptroller, attorney general, lieutenant governor, and governor who are running in this year's election. Following the candidate forum, we are going to have a workshop sessions speaking about elections. Senator Kagan has been very involved making sure our election security is strong. So she's bringing in a national firm a national group that came to our summer conference. We're going to be talking about advocacy and how you can advocate before the legislature and how to use their tools there, as well as hearing from other municipal officials who are running. We have 14 municipal officials running for a higher office this year and talking about taking that next step. One of the best things that we could do at the league is having more municipal officials in the legislature as well as on the county level. So we wish them all the best luck. And if you're interested in doing so, we want to make sure you have the opportunity to learn from your colleagues. So October 8th, Crown Plaza in Annapolis, it will be, I think it already is on the website and registration's already open. Our leadership conference is December 2nd through the 4th in Baltimore City for the first time. We're very excited at the Marriott Waterfront. We do have new deadline or timelines opening up. I think the hotel and registration opens in early September. It will end way before Thanksgiving. So please make sure if you would like to attend to get yourself signed up, and you can reach out to our leadership development team for any questions on that conference. Thank you all for joining us today. We're very excited to see everyone join, and we'll be sharing this out across the membership.